Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We are from Group 3. We'll present the result of our discussion on analyzing translation techniques in the conclusion and implication of the study. Our group members consist of Lucia Sanjiana, Ismi Aziza Ari Ilsanti, and I, Adinda Kartika Putri. Okay, the first session, I found some differences in the result of manual translation, Yandex, and Bing. The first is mediated mall activities. In the manual translation, it's become translate kegiatan sosial di mediasi mall that used Kalke. Kalke is translating structural elements and adapting to the structure of the target language. In Yandex and Bing, they are using amplification. There is kegiatan mall yang dimediasi secara sosial. Okay, amplification adds detailed information that is not in the searched language text, such as kata yang and secara. Okay, the second is the word of accuracy. In a manual translation was used established equivalent, translating by prioritizing the prevalence or general site. Accuracy is ketepatan. Okay, for Yandex and Bing, they used borrowing. So borrowing the word remains the same because it borrows from the word accuracy and becomes akurasi. Okay, the third is the word of candidate. In manual is using established equivalent, translating by prioritizing the prevalence or general site candidate and become calon. And for the Yandex and Bing, they use borrowing. So borrowing, their word remains the same because it borrows from the word candidate becomes kandidat. Okay. For the fourth is manual. Is the study. In the manual is using borrowing. The manual is using borrowing. In manual and manual and Bing using borrowing. So Borrowing is the word remains the same because it borrows from the word. Study becomes study. Okay, for the Yandex, using established equivalent. Established equivalent, translating by prioritizing the prevalence or general site. Study become penelitian. Okay, the fifth is the word of tersebut. And in the manual is using amplification. Add detailed information that is not in the search language text. Kata tersebut. Okay, the sixth is in manual. The manual is using calque. Manual is using calque. Translating structural element and adapting to the structure of the target language. Number 6 is using calque. Okay, for the Yandex and Pings using amplification. In this using amplification. Amplification add details information that is not in the search language text. The words like alat mall Telegram yang dimediasi secara sosial, and this search language that through the social media mall tool of Telegram. Okay, the seventh is for manual. The word of participant in manual is used borrowing. Using borrowing. Okay, borrowing. The word remains the same because it borrows from the word participant and becomes participant. Okay, I'm sorry, it's wrong. It becomes participant. Okay. For Yandex and Ping was used established equivalent. This one established equivalent. Established equivalent, translating by prioritizing the prevalence or general site participant and become peserta. Okay, the eighth is Yandex and Ping. And the word of and the word of is the word of number implicitation. Okay, implicitation. In the search language, which is a present, but in the Yandex and Ping translation, it is not. In this search language, the word of which is a present, but in the Yandex and Ping, there is a not. Okay, for the ninth is manual. Manual using variation of the word of success. kesuksesan. Okay. Of the word success to kesuksesan, that is a variation. For the Yandex and Bing, they are using established equivalent. Established equivalent. Established equivalent. Established equivalent. Translating by prioritizing the prevalence or general side. Success become keberhasilan. Keberhasilan. Okay, for the next will present by Ismi Aziza.
Okay, I will explain about my analysis using offline translator. It is manual translator, and the online translator using Yandex translator and Bing translator. Okay, for the first is can. Can in the dictionary meaning is bisa, and the manual translator interpreted to bisa. And in the Yandex translator interpreted to dapat, and the Bing translator same with Yandex translator, which is interpreted to dapat. In the manual translator, using literal translation. Literal translation is word by word translation process, and the Yandex and Bing translator using established equivalent. It is patent word translation or in accordance with everyday. Okay, next in number 2 is the word which in the dictionary meaning is sebuah. Okay, in the dictionary meaning is sebuah. And in the manual translator interpreted to sebuah, and in the Yandex and Bing translator cannot interpret it. So in the manual translator using literal translation, it is word by word translation process, and in the Yandex and Bing translator using implicitasi. Implicitasi is add a new word to target language. Okay, the next is number 3. Number 3 is can, and in the dictionary meaning is bisa, interpreted to bisa. And if the manual translator cannot interpret it, and in the Yandex translator interpreted to dapat, in the Bing is same with the Yandex translator. So methods of number 3 is manual translator using implicitasi. Implicitasi is add a new word to target language. In the Yandex and Bing translator using established equivalent. This is patent word translation or in accordance with everyday. Next is number 4. Number 4 is written. Yeah, written. Written in the Dictionary meaning is menulis. And in the manual translator interpreted to menulis, in the Yandex is tertulis, and in the Bing is menulis. So method number 4 is manual translator using transposition. Transposition is change the order of word categories. And in the Yandex is literal translation. Literal translation is word by word translation process, and in the Bing translation, same with manual translation, this is transposition, is change the order of word categories. Okay, the next is number 5. The word is it. So in the manual translation, interpreted to hal ini, in the Yandex hal ini, and in the Bing is ini. It in dictionary meaning is ini. In manual translation using implicitasi, this is add a new word to target language, and Yandex is same with manual translator, and Bing using literal translation. This is word by word translation process. Okay, number 6. The word is can. In the manual translator, you interpreted to bisa. In the Yandex is dapat, and in the Bing is dapat. Manual translator using literal translation. This is word by word translation process, and in the Yandex and Bing using established equivalent. This is 10th word translation or in accordance with everything. And the number 7, the word is recommended. Recommended. In the manual translator, interpreted to direkomendasikan. In the Yandex is disarankan, and in the Bing is disarankan. So dictionary meaning of recommended is direkomendasikan. So in the manual translator using literal translation, word by word translation process, and in the Yandex and Bing is established equivalent. This is patent word translation or in accordance with everyday. Number 8. Is writing. Writing in the dictionary meaning is menulis, and in the manual translator interpreted to menulis, in the Yandex is penulisan, and in the Bing is menulis. So this is a method. Manual translator using literal translation. This is word by word translation process, and in the Yandex and Bing and in the Yandex using established equivalent is patent word translation or in accordance with everyday. And in the Bing, same with manual translator. This is literal translation. Okay, number 9. The word is provide. Provide. Okay. Provide The dictionary meaning is memberikan. Memberikan. So, in the manual translator, interpreted to memberi, and in the index is memberi, in the Bing is memberikan. So, the method is manual translator using variation. Variation is translating words using informal language to make it easier to understand. Yandex is same with manual translator, and the Bing translator is literal translation. This is word by word translation process. Okay, next is number 10. This is learners. Learners in the dictionary meaning. The meaning is pelajar, and in the manual translator, interpreted to pelajar. In the Yandex is peserta didik, and in the Bing translator is peserta didik. So the method number 10 is manual translator using literal translation. This is word by word translation process, and in the Yandex and Bing translator using established equivalent. This is patent word translation or in accordance with everything. The next is number 11. This is there. There. There, the meaning of dictionary is mereka. So in the manual translator cannot interpret it, and in the Yandex is mereka. In the Bing translator is mereka. Okay, the and method is manual translator using implicitasi. This is add a new word to target language, and in the literal and the Yandex and Bing translator using literal translation. This is word by word translation process. So number 12, it is of. Of. Of in the dictionary meaning is dari, and in the manual translator interpreted to dari, and in the Yandex and Bing translator cannot interpret it. So the method of number 12 is manual translator using literal translation. This is word by word translation process, and in the Yandex and Bing using implicitasi. This is add new word to target language. The next is number 13. Court. Court. Court in the dictionary meaning is bisa, and in the manual translator interpreted to bisa. In the Yandex translator is dapat. In the Bing translator is dapat. Okay, the method is manual translator using literal translation. This is word by word translation process, and in the Yandex and Bing translator using established equivalent. This is patent word translation or in accordance with everything. Next is number 14. 14 is a, and the dictionary meaning is sebuah. So in the manual translator, interpreted to sebuah, and in the Yandex and Bing translator cannot interpret it. The method is manual translation, manual translator using literal translation. This is word by word translation process, and in the Yandex and Bing translator using implicitasi. This is add a new word to target language. The next is number 15. Number 15 is in the Yandex and Bing have a new word. The word is dapat. So in the search language, the word is not have. So the method is in the manual. In the manual translation is cannot interpret it. In the Yandex is amplification. In the Bing translator is amplification. Amplification is adding another word that doesn't match the formula, because in the search language the word is can. And the last is levels. Okay, levels. The dictionary meaning is level. So in the manual translator, interpreted to level. In the Yandex is tingkat, and in the Bing translator is tingkat. So in the method is manual translator using literal translation. This is word by word translation process, and in the Yandex and Bing translator using adaptation. Adaptation is culturally adapted word translation.
Can, dapat, in Yandex translation is variation, because can in the dictionary is defined as bisa, but in the target language it is defined as dapat. It's also in Bing translation is variation, because can in the dictionary is defined as bisa, but in the target language it is defined as dapat. Next is allow. In Yandex translation is variation, because allow in the dictionary is defined as mengizinkan, but in the target language it is defined as memberikan. It's also in Bing translation is variation, because allow in the dictionary is defined as mengizinkan, but in the target language it is defined as memberikan. Next is for or bagi. In Yandex translation is variation, because for in the dictionary is defined as untuk, but in the target language is bagi. And the Bing translation is variation. For in the dictionary is defined as untuk, but in the target language is bagi. Next is with, is implicitasi, because in the short language There is the word with, however, in the target language does not exist. Next is in Yandex translation is amplification because to in the dictionary is to find ke, but in the target language is atas. It's also in Ping translation is amplification because to in the dictionary is defined as ke, but in the target language is terhadap. Next is Remedies. Remedies in Yandex translation is amplification. The tiles that are not formulate search language from the word remedies, which means perbaikan, but in the target language it means solusi. And the Ping translation is amplification. The tiles that are not formulate st from the word remedies, which means perbaikan, but in target language it means solusi. Next is study. Study in Ping translation is borrowing from study to study. Remedies in manual translation is amplification that are not formulated st from the word remedies, which means perbaikan, but in the target language it means obat. Study in Yandex translation is variation. Study in the dictionary is defined as belajar, but in the target language is penelitian. And the next is suffers. In Yandex translation is variation. Suffer in the dictionary is defined as menderita, but in the target language is mengalami. And the Ping translation is variation. Suffer in the dictionary is defined as menderita, but in the target language is mengalami. Next is more. In the manual translation is variation. More in the dictionary is defined as lebih banyak, but in the target language is lagi. Next is need. Need in Yandex translation is variation. Need in the dictionary is defined as membutuhkan, but in the target language is perlu. Also in Ping translation is variation. Need in the dictionary is defined as membutuhkan, but in the target language is perlu. Next is provide. Provide in Yandex translations is variation. Provide in the dictionary is defined as menyediakan, but in the target language is memberikan. It's also being translations is variation. Provide in the dictionary is defined as menyediakan, but in the target language is memberikan. And the next is Remedios. Remedios in manual translation is amplification to tell they are not formulate search language or ST from the word remedios, which means perbaikan, but in the target language it means obat. And the Yandex translation is amplification. The child are not formulate ST from the word remedies, which means perbaikan, but in the target language it means solusi. And also in Bing translation, amplification. The 12 are not formulate ST from the word remedies, which means perbaikan, but in the target language it means solusi. Next is verbalize. In manual translation, verbalize is borrowing from verbalize to verbalisasi.
Okay, next, I will analyze in the last part. In here, in search language is moreover, in online translator is lagi pula, in Yandex is selain itu, and in Bing is selain itu. In here, in offline translator, they use a variation technique, and Bing and Yandex is established equivalent, because in dictionary moreover which means selain itu, but in manual translator is lagi pula. And the next is number 2 is in SL is future studies. In manual translator is penelitian yang akan datang, and then Yandex studi masa depan, and Bing is studi di masa depan. In here, manual translator use amplification, and then Bing and Yandex is calcu. In here, there is adding word to clarify meaning, penelitian yang akan datang, which mean in dictionary is future study is masa depan, but in here penelitian yang akan datang. So in here is amplification. And Bing and Yandex is use calcu, because calcu is translate use literal. So future studies, if we translate, it's masa depan studi. So it is in online translator use calcu. And then number 3 is offsites. Offsites is which mean seperti, but in online translator there is a translate. So in here is number 3 is in here number 3 is established equivalent, because such is seperti, but in online translator there is a translate. So in Bing and Yandex use amplificasi technique, because there is a translate in target language. And then number 4, in here is number 4 of EFL or of EFL writers in short language, but and in manual language is dari EFL penulis. And then number 4 is penulis EFL, and then in Bing is penulis EFL. So in here, manual translator use literal translation or word by word translation. And then in number 4 is calc, because of EFL writers, and the actual meaning is EFL penulis, but in here penulis EFL, and then in the Bing is penulis also penulis EFL. So in here I use calc technique. Number 5 is in the search language is technology enhanced corrective feedback. So in manual translator is peningkatan teknologi umpan balik korektif. And then the Yandex is umpan balik korektif yang ditingkatkan teknologi. And then in what is that? Ping is umpan balik korektif yang ditingkatkan teknologi. That is same with Yandex. So in here I use calc, and then there is calc, and then in here umpan balik korektif yang ditingkatkan teknologi. It is a calc, also calc, and in Ping umpan balik korektif yang ditingkatkan teknologi. It is a calc, but different meaning. The process of translate in calc, there is same. In the third manual Ping or Yandex, there is same technique calc, but the meaning is different. In here peningkatan teknologi umpan balik korektif, but in here umpan balik korektif yang ditingkatkan teknologi. There is same calc but different meaning. Okay, and the next is number 6 is programs. Programs in dictionary is program, but in here in manual translator is only program, and Ping and Yandex is program. Okay. And in Yandex is program, but in Ping is program. So in here there is implicitasi technique, because only program, but in Yandex is literal translation, because translate word by word translation. In Ping is also implicitation technique. Okay, next is number 7. There is in SL is Grammarly, but in manual translator is tata bahasa. And then in number 7 is Grammarly. In Yandex is Grammarly, and in Ping is also Grammarly. So in here I use literal translator, and in online translator is use borrowing, or also we can use established equivalent, but I think it is more better use borrowing translator or borrowing technique. Okay, next is number 8. There is as search language is EFL learners writing. So in manual translator, which means penulisan EFL pada peserta didik. And then the Yandex is tulisan EFL peserta didik. And in Ping is penulisan pelajar EFL. So in here, there is in manual translator is penulisan EFL pada peserta didik. So there is adding information in pada. So in here I use amplification technique. And then in Yandex is tulisan EFL peserta didik. In here I use calc because translate word literally. Jadi di sini So in here, translate word literally, because there is use calcul, and the actual meaning is EFL peserta didik menulis, but in here tulisan EFL peserta didik. And in so I use calcul technique. And the next is number 9. There is source language but in manual translator, which means sebuah, but in Yandex and Bing, there is no translate in target language. So in here, manual is literal translation, but in Bing and Yandex or in online translator, which I use implicitation technique. And the next is number 10. For in dictionary, which mean untuk. But in manual translator is selama. And then in Bing, in Yandex is untuk, and then in Bing is dalam. So in here, number 10 is in manual translator. I think it is a variation or established equivalent, because in here same, untuk or selama is the meaning of for. So in here, in manual translator, I use variation, and in here, in Yandex, I use established equivalent, and then in Bing, I use discursive creation, because the meaning of for is untuk or selama, but not dalam. So in here is translate out of the context or discursive creation. So the next is number 11. There is true experimental studies. In manual translator, which means penelitian through experimental. And then the Yandex is studi eksperimental sejati. And then the last in Bing is same, studi eksperimental sejati. So in here, I use in manual translator, I use variation, because studies in here, which mean penelitian. So in here, I use variation. And then the next is in Yandex is studi eksperimental sejati. So I use calcul or translator of word or phrase literally. In here, through experimental studies with actual meaning is sejati experimental study, but in here in Yandex translator is studi eksperimental sejati. So in here is translator word by literally. So in here I use calcul technique. And the next in Yandex, same, it is calcul technique, because it is translated by word literally. And the next is number 12. In here, in In such language, there is no word in such language, but there is adding information in manual translator. There is yang benar. So in such language, only through experimental studies are required. But in here, in manual translator, there is penelitian through experimental yang benar diperlukan. So in here, I use amplification or adding a word to in here adding word to clarify the meaning. So in here there is adding word yang benar. So in here in number 12 I use amplification technique. But in online translator there is no adding word. So in here there is only in manual translator there is amplification technique. And the last is number 13 is for short language is writing. For the word writing. In dictionary, writing is menulis. So in here, in manual translator, so in manual translator is tulisan or there is established equivalent or actual meaning. Established equivalent, and in Yandex also established equivalent. But in Bing is which mean writing is penulisan. So in here number 13 word variation from menulis to penulisan. So in here there is 3 technique. In here there is established equivalent, and in Bing is variation. Okay, thank you. That's all about my analysis from this paragraph. So thank you for the attention, and so thank you for the. I'm sorry if any correct or any mistake from this analysis. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.